Mm. So, there was an interesting idea that's not really in lines with the literature when it comes to immunology and that sort of thing, or psychoimmunology or whatever. But as far as immune disorders are concerned, but it's an interesting idea nonetheless. About the Epstein Barr virus, and you might want to notice that attempting to remove the Epstein Barr virus has been the subject of numerous sort of sapient medicine type frequency type characters, and there might be a good reason for it. The thing about the Epstein Barr virus is that detecting viruses in labs is really a kind of a 20th and 21st century thing. However, the information available about the Epstein Barr virus is that it occurs in 98% of the population globally. That if a person is infected with it before the age of 15, it's cleared out as a sort of nasty cold. If someone gets it between about the ages of 15 and 25, it's expressed as infectious mononucleosis or glandular fever. And after the age of 25, it's rough. You can get mono, but the consequences are quite different. It's only people between the ages of 15 and 25 who've been infected with the Epstein Barr virus at that time who are increased risk of multiple sclerosis. So Epstein Barr virus, despite occurring in 98% of the population, only represents a small minority of people who are susceptible. So only a small minority of them are susceptible to having Epstein Barr virus as a precursor for other diseases. And the type of diseases might vary from individuals in individuals. So between the ages of 15 and 25, if all the other precursors are there, note, if all the other precursors are there, so it can't just be one or the other. Okay, it's a very, 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 very specific set of circumstances, and also there is a case-by-case issue as well. So circumstances might not be identical from patient to patient, but the themes might be similar. So the risk of getting multiple sclerosis is not very high. It's actually quite low. Despite 98% of the population having been infected by the Epstein Barr virus. So, what that might mean later in life is that people could wind up with if Epstein Barr can affect the immune system over the course of time in that particular way, it might affect people with different types of other things going on, different types of variables differently. So someone has a history of alcoholism, for example. If they were infected with the Epstein Barr virus, they could potentially get diabetes. The alcoholism would affect their insulin levels, and if they had an immune variant of diabetes, it might be as a consequence of the immune system being misprogrammed in that particular fashion to have a pancreatic dysfunction. So the idea that because it affects 98% of the population, it doesn't actually, without everyone getting MS, doesn't mean they don't get sick. They do get sick, but a small percentile are getting this, and a small percentile are getting that, a small percentile are getting the other thing, and there's just so many different ways people can get sick that it turns out that it's a wide variety of possibilities there. So that's really great news to start the day with, isn't it? Anyway, a really, really great idea. So, what's really interesting about the Epstein Barr virus, though, is because it's a herpetiform disorder. Herpetiform virus. So it's a variant of herpes. It's it's a variant of herpes. Wait, when people get herpes before the age of 15, how does that happen? Well, they get breastfed. No, really, it's as simple as that. Or they share a biscuit with their friend, a friend at school, and their friend just happens to have it. It's a disease that passes through the community quite readily. It's easily transmittable. It's been transmitted to everyone already, and a long time ago. And it just so happens a very small minority can be affected in particular ways later in life. And there is a very specific set of conditions that contribute to that, um, and the different effects that might occur. So herpes, huh? So with that, with that, it's really interesting that it's considered a herpes disease. But if you did a STI check, uh, Epstein Barr virus wouldn't come up on it. They don't screen for Epstein Barr virus as an STI or sex or root sickness. Okay. It's not considered an STI. It's not transmitted sexually, basically, even though it is a type of a variant of herpes. So there's that. So, how did the Epstein Barr virus become so widespread throughout the world? Well, because we don't really have epidemiological information um, before they started, Epstein and Barr started taking it, um, which is why it's called that. We, you know, it's sort of really speculation. That being said, there seems to be a sort of general vibe that's suggesting that the Epstein Barr virus is what you might call an international phenomena, partly as a consequence of imperial um, activities in after the 1400s. So, um, imperial expansion, particularly out of Europe, occurred during that time, and if that continent was where the first infectees were from, then they would have brought that along with a swathe of other illnesses like influenza and the pox. And so that charming, amusing little anecdote suggests that militaristic and imperial activities is associated with increased risk of diseases. So, the idea of the foreigners coming into your land with an illness and, they're worried they're going to make you sick, there's a reason for that. However, in the 21st century, we're now at a time where, you can pretty well rest assured imperial expansion has completely maximized. Okay, like they're like at the point of like talking about going off world, like it's completely done. So they're pointing their empires into outer space now. Okay, and got Star Wars programs and all kinds of weird things going on, and so basically the idea there is that because of that, all of the viruses that had previously been regionally contained through a reduction in people moving already spread out as well. So the empire of viruses has already travelled around. There are spot flares of weird ones. There's the concern of mutation of a variety of influenza viruses called SARS. So it's in that SARS isn't really influenza, but it's in that general direction. And so COVID-19 is kind of a bit like that. And then and so the question becomes is how do viruses relate to people when it comes to language? Okay, now this is sort of an illusory correlation in the sense that can you really make a connection between language and viruses, outside of virus being the common parlance word that the tech guys took for the describing the computer shit. So when the computers got invented and stuff, the computer guys were, sitting in a packet of biscuits, and they decided to call the file they just invented a cookie. Okay, stuff like that. Or, oh no, that's a bit of bad software. Came out of nowhere. It's infected. It's caused a problem. Oh no, it's a virus. It's sort of like they've taken words out of the common parlance. So it's not just a case of like technical language being taken by spiritualist groups and used way, 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 way out of context. New Age movement, we're pointing our finger right at you. Okay, big time. Like they're the worst offenders for that. The thing is that it's also the case that technical people have taken words from common parlance and they've put it in a new context. So this idea of words being used in different contexts is a fairly, like, it's an expansion upon the idea of like the normal evolution of speech, basically, and socialization, memetics, if you will. On the other hand, there is a issue there of, can your immune system be affected by words? What does the word you mean to English speakers who go on? English speakers, the word you. Okay, so the word you, Y-O-U. Okay, so for a dyslexic person, the word you sounds like the word you. Okay, the written word you is not a thing. They're not keen on the written word you. It doesn't work out for them. Okay, when they hear the word you, they hear the word you, and they might not know if you mean sheep. Okay, so if the word you means sheep, as in EWE, that's different from if the word means YOU, as in yo. Okay, the history of the word you is fraught with difficulties because it turns out just before the colonial expansion, imperial expansion period, the English aristocracy made a common law court ruling to say that everyone from the serfs or the working class plebeians would be referred to as YOU. And the aristocrats and judges and whatnot would be VOUS. And what's really strange about that is that, first of all, it's unusual to imagine a court determining how people should talk unless it's about a specific term of reference as it relates to court proceedings or definitions and statutes or whatever you might want to call them. Making a ruling on pronouns is kind of concerning, actually. And what's even more concerning is that the common usage of the term YOU before that ruling was you stupid chair, you fucking cup, So we're to third person singular object. Word you before that referred to third person singular object. Okay? Not second person single or plural subject. So when they've changed the object into the subject, that means to linguistically objectify the population, okay, of English speakers. And shortly after that, some of those very same people that were told that they had to use that pronoun that way and started to do so with difficulty, went to the Americas following Columbus. They went to Australia with Lieutenant Cook and Governor Arthur Phillip. They went to New Zealand with a different governor. They went to South Africa, India, Egypt, lots and lots of different places they went, spreading that word, retooled in a way that was evolving over time so that it would become the modern usage there is today, which the common parlance for YOU refers to the second person singular subject or second person plural subject. However, there is very interesting dialectical variations for that pronoun. For example, in Koori English, sometimes that dialect, people say, bring him over here when they're talking about an object. So it seems to have been the case because of the time period that certain dialects of English developed. The difference between American English, Australian English, and dialects and sub-dialects within the Australian language groups, it means that the pronoun YOU becoming a subject where it was once an object and might have been confusing for people who didn't speak English and English was their second or third or even fifth or sixth language, and they've gone bring him over here because they've heard that that's how pronouns are used. Objects are referred to as people, right? Specifically male ones. It's also the case if you look at English literature up until about, say, the 1950s, and particularly from the late 1800s, you'll probably notice the term mankind is used, and there's a general tendency towards not using female pronouns when it refers to like existential concepts like reality or society. Sort of the absence of the feminine pronouns would probably suggest that language encoding varied inconsistently by region and time period in history, and by whether or not those individuals were also exposed to non-English languages prior to that pronoun shift. So the gradual evolving into that means that the aristocracy got what they wanted. All the plebeians are referred to as YOU. And so overthrowing that particular court ruling, it's interesting that they've never done it. It's interesting that that is still on the books. Unless there's someone out there that actually knows whether or not they've actually overthrown that, they've appealed that ruling, they've repealed it by statute or something like that. It sounds like almost like the enforced linguistic confusion generation of the community. And what's really fascinating is that in that time, exact same time frame, you have an increased risk of Epstein Barr virus around the world. You also have, and what's the word? Sorry about the pronoun you. Sorry. Let's take that pronoun out. We'll try and take that pronoun out. There is also, not you. You also have apologies. Okay. There is also a increased risk of autism. Okay. And variations in how people see pronouns. And what's really interesting is that it seems like autistic people are perceiving them accurately. Okay, they are in fact perceiving them accurately. The problem is the pronouns are not accurate, and there are narcissistic social dynamics at work, which means that the way that people with autism perceive intentions is a little bit different from non-autistic people. So, and the reason for that is because people became very gifted liars. Okay, they became gifted liars. That's what the normies did. They became gifted liars, and they became haughty and arrogant and had cultural myopia. So during that colonial period, there was enormous amounts of stratification. So um, uh, women were, of course, not classified as important. Um, and yada yada, politics, all the rest, black versus white, and so on and so forth. And so um, the, it's almost as though, looking at it from that perspective, autism is a diagnosis of Darvo. It's a diagnosis of someone's experienced Darvo. They've experienced Darvo in the context, potentially, of having multiple language groups in their family history, or they've or something similar to that. So, in more specifically, they've been surrounded by people who have been expressing some kind of aggression, narcissistic control behavior. So social dynamics stuff comes into it, and it seems almost as though that those people that are doing that are trying to ward off a virus by passing it on to someone else. Okay? And that virus is Christianity.